Good day to all of you. The objective of this short video is to give you an idea or guideline how to tackle the verbal section in CAT 18. How many questions should you answer to get the cutoff? Now I am defining the cutoff as 85 percentile. So before we get into the nitty-gritty of this presentation, we should make some assumptions about CAT 18 verbal section. First I want to say, CAT has become predictable. The pattern is going to remain the same. The difficulty level is going to remain the same. That assumption we will make. Can I say this with certainty? No. I cannot be 100% sure. But looking at the fact that it has remained the same for the last 3 years, I am going to say 90% probability it will be the same. So what was it like last 3 years? Let's examine. There were 34 questions in verbal, 24 questions in RC, 10 questions in verbal ability. 24 questions were all multiple choice questions, divided into 3 passages of 6 questions each and 2 passages of 3 questions each for a total of 24, and 10 questions in verbal ability, out of which 4 were para-jumbles, 3 were odd sentence, 3 were summary. There could be a variation, sometimes there could be a closing line or last line, but totally 10 questions are non-MCQ. I am going to assume the same structure is going to remain. Okay. Now the first question to ask ourselves is anybody going to answer all 34 questions? Well, you will probably think not, but let's assume there are a small percentage of people who do answer all 34, maybe 0.5%. But you and I may not be able to do 34. Therefore, I have to critically examine these 34 questions and find out if you have to leave out something, what will I leave out? Well, I am going to leave out as first option para-jumbles. So these 4 questions I am not going to do. Why? Because there are no options. To do para-jumble without option is devilishly difficult. I don't think you should even try. You should try it only if you are the kind of person who can do 34 questions. Otherwise, leave it. Number 1. Number 2, between para-jumbles or between verbal ability and RC, you are better off doing RC than verbal ability. Why? Because when you read a passage, you either have 6 questions to answer or 3 questions to answer. It is very unlikely you will get all of them wrong. You may get 1 or 2 right in the 3 question RC or 3 or 4 right in the 6 question RC. But what happens in verbal ability? Each is an independent question and you can get all of them wrong. So probability wise you are better off in RC. Okay. Now the next question is, how many RCs should you read? Obviously as many as you can. As many as you can means 5. 5 RCs. Please remember that in all the last 3 years, all the 5 RCs have been readable. They were not difficult to read. Now the key question is, how much time will you take to read the 5 RCs? Now the time depends on what is the length of the RC or the length of the entire verbal section. Now in CAT 2017, the entire verbal section had about 5,000 words, including the passage, including the question, including the option, including the verbal ability questions and options. 5,000 words. Now if your reading speed is minimum say 200 words a minute, average. Some passages more, some passages less. You will spend 25 minutes reading it once. But reading once is not enough. You have to read it many times to answer a question on RC or a para-jumble or an odd sentence. So the less time you spend in reading it once, the more time you have to answer the questions. So that is first thing. So I am defining this limit of 200 words a minute. This is very easy to measure. You read something, look at the time taken, count the number of words and you know where you are. Now when I say average, it means if you read a newspaper article, you split it with 300. But you read something a little bit of non-fiction, not philosophy, something say sociology, it may be 150 words a minute. On an average, it should be 200 words a minute. Okay. That is one way of looking at it. Having said that, let's make it a little easier to understand. Suppose I take 10 minutes on an average per RC. So 5 RCs into 10, that is 50 minutes. For 24 questions. So I have answered 24 questions. How much balance do I have? 10 minutes. In 10 minutes, how many questions can I do in VA? Not more than 3. Because each of them will take at least 2-3 minutes. So let's take 3. The total number of questions you will answer is 24 plus 3, 27 questions. You are missing 7 questions. Now of course we will come back to the question and see whether with 27 questions can you clear the cutoff. The key here is this, RC of 50 minutes. Can you shorten it? Can you shorten it? So let's give some probabilities. If you do 5 RCs, 40 minutes, that's great, that's the best that you can do. You have 24 questions and you have 20 questions, 20 minutes for VA, that gives you 7, you answer 31 questions. But that's not better than 27 to 31. But let's say you are between 40 and 50. So let's take an average of 45 minutes, 5 RCs, 24 questions, 15 minutes, 5. So you do 29 questions. So 27, 29, 31 is what we are looking at 40, 45 and 50. Now the next thing is, how many questions should you do to clear the cutoff? First thing is to know what will be the cutoff. Do we have any information on this cutoff? Yes, we have. What we did in time, we looked at the scores, the scale score of thousands of our students for the last 3 years. CAT 15, CAT 16, CAT 17. And we found a remarkable consistency. The 85 percentile cutoff were anywhere between 48 to 51 marks. 48 to 51 marks, which means net 16, 17 questions. Now that brings us to a very important point in RC or in verbal ability. See, in verbal ability, unlike Quant and T.I.M.E, the accuracy is very low. If your accuracy is 65 to 70%, you've done really well. In Quant it can be 90, it can even be 100%. It can never be 90 overall in verbal ability. Therefore, what does it mean? If your average is going to be only 70%, the number of questions you answer must be more. Otherwise you will get more wrong. Now what is the minimum you should answer? If your cutoff is going to be 50 marks, let's say we answer 24 questions. 24 questions, out of which we get 18 correct, we get 4 wrong, and 2 questions we did not mark. We looked at it, I was not sure about the answer, so I did not mark. So how many marks will I get totally? 54 minus 4 equal to 50. So what does it tell me? What is the accuracy here? 2/3, 66%. So if the accuracy is 2/3, then you have to answer minimum 24 questions to get 80 percentile cutoff. This kind of a ratio. But this is not uncommon. This is not uncommon. Therefore, which means what? If you do only 20 questions, you need at least 17 correct. And that's a huge accuracy. That's 85% accuracy. That's going to be difficult for you to get. And if you want more than 85 percentile, you should do more than 24 questions. And to do more than 24 questions, the key lies in how much time you take to read RC. Therefore, if you do 45 minutes RC and 15 minutes verbal ability, then you are looking at 24 plus 5, 29 questions. Then, more than 24 and 29, the verbal ability questions are no negative marking. Therefore, it is easy to get 90 and 95 percentile. 90 percentile would be almost 55 marks, 57 marks. 90 percentile. 95 would be 60, 61. And 99 would be 67, 68. You see how many questions you have to answer that. Yes, what we have discussed so far. Objective is to reach the cutoff, which we defined as 85 percentile, which I said you have to get between 48 to 51 marks based on the analysis of the scorecards of our students in the last 3 years. Okay. There are two ways of looking. There are two separate ways of looking at it. One, suppose I finish RC in 45 minutes. I do 24 questions. I look at 24 questions. And I get 15 minutes for doing VA. I do 5 questions. I do 29 questions. If I take 15 minutes to do 24 RCs, then I can only 10 minutes and I get a shot at 3 questions, so totally 27. Difference are 2 questions. But I showed you how with 24 questions answered, 18 correct, 4 wrong, 2 unattempted, you can get 50 marks. So that's the minimum that you should get. If you want more, you need to attempt more questions. So what is very clear here is, if you want to get 90, 95, 99 percentile, number of attempts must go higher and higher and higher. While we assume that nobody can really do 34 questions, 30 and 31 is definitely possible if you cut down the time on RC.